the Israeli attack on Iran and the Iranian response to Israel. What exactly is happening and why at this particular time Israel wanted to strike Iran, and how was this strike carried out? Was the Iranian response equal? Does Iran even have the ability to respond? What are the scenarios that could happen in the coming days? What are the consequences of this issue on the Middle East region? What is the bigger plan behind the events that we are seeing? Many questions. A long video that will contain a lot of details. I hope you do not miss a part of the video because the whole issue is connected. We saw an Israeli air attack on Iran and it was Israel about striking Iranian nuclear reactors, striking air defense platforms, striking and assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists, and assassinating the entire military leadership in one strike and in one sortie. How did something of this magnitude happen in a country that is considered one of the strongest militaries in the Middle East, which is Iran? If you remember, a while ago an assassination operation was carried out against Haniya inside Iran. The Iranian interior is completely penetrated by missiles, and thus the operation that happened was not just an airstrike, because it is impossible for Israeli planes to move from Israel and pass through different airspace without being detected, and be able to carry out all these goals that happened. As follows, the anti-aircraft elements that were present on the ground and that had been inside Iran for a long time were able to neutralize the air defense platforms, which made it very easy for the Israeli aircraft to penetrate the air defense platform and the Iranian air defense network. They flew very smoothly from western Iran and entered the Iranian depth and struck the nuclear facilities and struck Tehran. If you look at the map, Tehran is inside the Iranian depth and is not a nearby city. Well, does the aircraft have the ability, if it has coordinates, to strike these targets with the precision of the aircraft guys? Now, they no longer strike from zero distance. They strike from distances of 150 kilometers or 100 kilometers an hour. More and from very high altitudes, but in order to hit an apartment inside a building in the way you saw, I need people on the ground to guide these missiles by radar pulses or laser. The missile that comes out of the plane rides the pulse and can enter through the room window. This is what we saw in the case of Hassan Nasrallah when he was assassinated while he was 11 floors underground. The Israeli strikes were coordinated in cooperation with the Mossad elements present on the ground, and all of them in one moment achieved all their goals and returned without any injuries. This was the first day. What can we conclude from this issue? We conclude that the security breach in Iran is strong. Very, very big topic. It has nothing to do with the military capabilities of Iran or the military capabilities of Israel. Both of them are militarily superior countries, but the security breaches and the presence of people on the ground whose identities we cannot understand and who they are is what causes the destabilization of the national security of any country. I hope the message has been received. Now let's move on to the Iranian response. The Iranian response was with ballistic missiles and its drones. Almost all of the drones were intercepted, then we began to see the explosions that existed in the skies of many Arab countries, even the Arab Republic of Egypt, and the ballistic missiles, which we can explain in a video on their own. Missiles can penetrate the atmosphere and descend at a very high speed, which makes them difficult to intercept. The Iron Dome that exists in Israel, which is in stages, the Iron Dome and David Sling, have the ability to intercept ballistic missiles. Here we must draw a long line and say, but does it have the ability to intercept all ballistic missiles? I would like to tell you no. Iran has launched what is said to be more than 150 ballistic missiles that reached deep into the capital, Tel Aviv, and caused great destruction. Maybe let people say, oh, Kareem, it is not the same amount of destruction that occurred in Iran. I want to tell you the idea that I am capable of reaching your lands with ballistic missiles. This in itself is a threat. Some people saw flying parts or the scene that you see in front of you where you find 3 or 4 burning things. This means that a ballistic missile was destroyed. In some other videos, there was a small video of an exploding part falling and no sign fell, and people said that these missiles are tired and don't have a bomb. No, I would like to tell you that these are parts of the missiles that were intercepted. This is not a complete missile. There was great destruction in Tel Aviv because of the ballistic missiles, and this leads to escalation again. Now we are in the tet for tat stage. What does it mean? It is in the stage where you hit me once and I will hit you once. The declared goal of Israel is saying that we will not let Iran possess a nuclear bomb because Iran has reached a 60% uranium enrichment rate and has the ability, at a time that no one knows when, it could be within weeks, months, or a year, to be able to manufacture more than 10 nuclear bombs. Israel claims that Iranian nuclear bombs could be put in the hands of terrorist or loyalist groups and thus constitute an existential threat to it, but the main purpose is completely different. Here we will delve into analyzing the purpose of the Iranian-Israeli war or the Israeli war with the Middle East and changing the military map of the Middle East, which did not begin in the past 2 days. But it started a long time ago and was announced very eloquently in 1997. By whom? By Netanyahu. Israel also always works on the principle that we must create an enemy so that the Israeli interior remains in agreement with the government's decisions. And that is exactly what happened after October 7th. Israel launched strikes against all fronts loyal to Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran itself. So what was the goal of that? Before the war with Iran began, it occupied the Gaza Strip with the aim of displacing and transferring the Palestinians to the Sinai Peninsula through military pressure to create a small parallel Palestinian state inside the Sinai Peninsula. And that is what has failed until this time. As for them, the second part, which is Hezbollah, was not achieved. Hezbollah was revived with a small operation, the Pager operation, after people were convinced that Hezbollah had the military ability to cause harm to Israel or even occupy Israel. However, very quickly Israel was able to penetrate and completely eliminate Hezbollah, and at the present time it is striking the suburbs of Beirut. It did not stop at that. At that time, the Bashar al-Assad regime was present. The Bashar al-Assad regime, which is originally loyal to Iran, the United States of America, and Turkey, helped the militias that were present in overthrowing the Bashar al-Assad regime, but Israel did not care and penetrated inside Syria, and at the time we are talking about now, Israeli forces are present south of Damascus, and every day they go out to strike Syria to neutralize the remaining weapons of Bashar al-Assad's regime, or the heavy weapons that could threaten Israeli security. Therefore, Israel has taken 2 stages. The first stage is to cut off the Iranian arms present in the region, and then after that we will strike the big bear or the big target. By striking this bigger target, this means that Iranian support for the proxies that are present, whether it is the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq or the Houthis in Yemen or even the Hamas movement, the Iranian support that is present will decrease significantly, and this is one of the purposes of the Israeli strike: preemption. Did Israel succeed in its strike? On paper, it succeeded, but Israel could not. According to the news that appeared, it would lead to stopping uranium enrichment inside Iran. Enrichment reactors are still operating properly until this time. It is possible that some other nuclear reactors have been severely damaged. The International Atomic Energy Agency is currently monitoring radiation levels in Iran, which could be a national environmental disaster for the entire region. The question here is, what are the possible scenarios for war and what is the result of what is happening? We talked about a military result, but there are other results. First of all, the scenarios that Iran could follow to stop war or ending the war. Israel will not stop its criminal actions and aggression against countries without referring to the United Nations, because we already know that the United Nations is not necessary. It is theirs to do what they want in it. The supreme leader in Iran has a few options. The first option is for him to sit and agree with the United States of America on new conditions to end the nuclear program. These conditions that were originally set for him will not exist because more unfair conditions will be set for him because he is not in a position to negotiate at the present time. For example, he was told that we will lift the economic sanctions on him, so if we come to negotiate with him again, we will not tell him that we are lifting the economic sanctions on him. On the contrary, we will tell him that the economic sanctions are in place and you will remove your nuclear program. I am trying to simplify the conversation and not get into complicated details because I know that there are many people who may not have political knowledge or are young. So I am trying to explain the conversation in a relaxed manner. If Iran sat at the negotiating table and reached an agreement with America, I believe that it is largely possible for this war to stop in the near future, but all of this will fall into the hands of the supreme leader. Why didn't they assassinate the supreme leader? Because the supreme leader will be the one who makes the decisions in this story. Let's move on to the other part. The second scenario is that Israel and Iran would prefer to exchange blows in this violent manner, even though the Israeli strike was very violent, very fast, and very accurate. However, Israel will incur very large losses from the ballistic missiles being launched at it daily, and this will lead to a major collapse in the Israeli economy, which will be greatly supported externally, but it will still not stop the harm and damage that will befall it, and this is what will make countries like America, France, and Britain intervene militarily to end the war more quickly if the war lasts longer than this. The third and final scenario is that either country says, "Come on, me and my enemies," and here, we are talking about striking the American bases and foreign bases in the Middle East, the Gulf states, Iraq, and Syria via Iran. If it is cornered, you will say it is me and those who sit on it. This will be the biggest blow that will plunge the region into a comprehensive war that will affect everyone. Most of the Arab countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Emirates, rejected the Israeli attack on Iran in this way because Israel did not take an international decision in clear violation of international law. First of all, the rise in oil prices began from the beginning of the Israeli strike. Oil prices will rise dramatically because Iran is a major oil country with huge oil reserves. Therefore, the entire world's oil exports will be affected, including the Arabian Gulf region from which a large amount of oil is exported through the Strait of Hormuz to the rest of the world. Oil exports will also be greatly affected if the price of oil or petroleum rises, and consequently the prices of many things will rise with it. Digital currencies are in a very sharp decline, and we are beginning to see a rise in the price of the dollar and a very large rise in gold prices. This will lead to the destabilization of the entire global economy after we said that Iran and Israel are striking each other. So why is all this happening in the first place? Israel has a plan with the help of the United States of America, which is to neutralize all the major military powers in the Middle East. This plan began a long time ago, beginning in the 70s, by making the Arab countries engage in wars with each other or even destroy them militarily, directly or indirectly. For example, and not the confinement so that you know where we were and where we are now. The strongest army that was present in this region was the Iraqi army. Iraq has been fighting Iran for 8 years without stopping, which has led to its great exhaustion. After the destruction of Iraq, the Iraqi army is no longer the same as the previous Iraqi army. The state of Iraq, the ancient oil state with a very strong economy and very large military forces, has been neutralized and no longer poses a threat to Israel. Syria has the same story in the current situation and in the previous situation. The Arab Republic of Egypt was besieged by disputes and wars. For example, the state of Sudan was a complete state, then it became 2 states, North Sudan, then South Sudan, and then after that, North Sudan is now divided into 2 parts, the National Army against the Rapid Support Forces, a comprehensive war in which Libya, which was a very large economic power, was destroyed by NATO. What happened is that at the present time that we are talking about, Libya is divided into 2 halves, one in the east and the other in the west. In the 90s, some very big disagreements occurred because of the Western Sahara region between Morocco and Algeria, and they even entered into a military clash. Inciting strife and division between the countries of the Middle East is a policy that the West plays with the utmost intelligence by creating new ideologies that have nothing to do with borders and a single homeland, but have a relationship with political, intellectual, or religious ideologies outside the framework of the homeland and borders. And this is what leads to, there is a very big disagreement. We are entering into political disagreements between supporters and opponents. Who is a supporter and who is not a supporter? Who is a traitor and who is not a traitor? At the same time, he was very happy with the idea of disagreement and the idea of clashing between Arabs and among themselves. I think I want to keep them like this, insulting each other, and I have no problem with that. This is the best thing that he could see. The militias and armed groups that appear to have loyalty to non-Arab countries simply because of the common ideology that has nothing to do with the borders of the land. The issue is this policy of divide and conquer. Now we want to calculate the account correctly and say, what is the next step after ending this? The Israeli-Iranian conflict. We have said before in many videos that the next step is Syria. The current Syrian regime poses a major threat unless an agreement is reached with the United States to form a new policy for Syria. But Israel will not grow and will not stop there. It will continue to strike in Syria and Lebanon. The same story. The actual turn will be Iraq. I hope the picture is clear. Iran's support for movements such as Hamas and Hezbollah, and Israel's targeting of Iranian nuclear sites before 2025. Main incident, June 13, 2025, Operation Euphrates Lion. Israeli strikes on the Natanz, Arak, and Isfahan facilities, killing Iranian commanders and scientists. Iran responded with a barrage of missiles and drones targeting southern Israeli cities, Tel Aviv, Beersheba, striking Soroka Hospital, causing multiple injuries. Destroyed missile production centers and continued to strike factories and nuclear power plants. Iran launched more than 150 missiles and over 100 drones, wounding hundreds in Tel Aviv and Beersheba. Iran's military infrastructure was affected. Iran lost a third of its stockpile of missile launchers. Latest updates. June 20th, 2025. Casualty toll, Iran greater than or equal to 639 killed, including 263 civilians, and over 1,300 wounded Israel. 24 to 65 civilians killed, including a Ukrainian girl, and over 240 wounded. Iranian stockpiles of certain missiles are depleted. Cyber attacks on infrastructure have occurred, and joint Israeli-U.S. surveillance of Iranian aircraft has been carried out. Internal and regional displacement as part of Iranian expulsion 2025. Hundreds of thousands have left Tehran for Turkey and Azerbaijan. Bombings and targeting of cities continue. Bombing continues despite international pressure. Human and economic losses. Iran, heavy human losses, thousands injured, critical health, energy, and infrastructure crises. Israel, continued medical damage, declining health services, and a military preoccupied with air defense. Economic, rising oil prices, global stock market turmoil, and the evacuation of tourists and diplomats from the Middle East. Human and economic losses. Iran, heavy human losses, thousands injured, critical health, energy, and infrastructure crises. Israel, continued medical damage, declining health services, and a military preoccupied with air defense. Economic, rising oil prices, global stock market turmoil, and the evacuation of tourists and diplomats from the Middle East. Expectations for the end of the war, possible scenarios. A comprehensive ceasefire, an internationally mediated agreement, UN and European, including a freeze on Iran's nuclear program and a security guarantee for Israel. Regional rift. The conflict expands to include Lebanon and Syria, with possible U.S. military intervention. A prolonged siege, a frozen state of air and missile warfare with no clear solution. In the future, the most likely option appears to be a frozen conflict approach, with mediation to de-escalate and stabilize the lines of contact. We've witnessed a massive escalation in a painful war that began with an airstrike and left widespread destruction. Which scenario do you think is most likely? Can the world avoid a full-scale regional war? Write your opinion, support the channel by liking and subscribing, and activate the notifications button.